disaster happens, we can identify who is already there, who is already doing work in that zone, who has that expertise. We hope that you will join us and join this network. We are also working to develop a series of free online training modules. We released the first one on social vulnerability to disasters 2 months ago. The disaster mental health one came out 2 days ago. And why are we doing this? We are doing this because we want to democratize access to knowledge and information. We heard what President Javidan Rodriguez said this morning about there is already 70 years of research expertise that is out there, but because this field is so event-driven, oftentimes people come in and they start doing research. So we hope these training modules can provide at least that basic knowledge and information that's already out there, also on the website. And then the last couple of things we are doing, we are working to develop best practice guidance for the ethical conduct of extreme events research. We have a partnership with the Natural Hazards Review where we are publishing a series of very short briefing sheets that take on many of these issues we're talking about here. And we also have a series of check sheets. If there's something that you wish you knew researchers knew about, we want you to write a check sheet. We're putting these up on the Converge website so there can be a compilation of this knowledge. And then last but not least, we also think one of the biggest ways why do we all go into the field after a disaster is because we are trying to collect data as researchers. But we think if we could work better together as a research community, we can reduce that researcher footprint, but only through sharing data and information. And so there we can become force multipliers through reducing duplication of effort, but then actually increasing replication. This will allow us to preserve all that legacy data that's already out there that has been collected by researchers in this field, allow for additional analyses of already existing data sets, and get publication credit. And if you're interested in learning more, on April 17th at the University of Colorado Boulder, we're going to have a publisher data day. We've been working for the last year with the Design Safe Cyber Infrastructure at the University of Texas, Austin, to set up the first ever social science and interdisciplinary data model for the hazards and disaster field so we can publish our data. Engineers have already put 200 data sets up there, but we needed a data model for the social science community so we can also publish our data. And so we can put our data up there, and we hope you will join us, and thank you for being our gracious moderator. Thank you.
Okay, 10 minutes don't work. Last and but not least, I would like to introduce our last speaker, Guiomar Rivera Matos. She's a graduate research associate at the University of Arizona State University.
Saludos a todos, todas y todas y gracias por estar aquí en la mañana de hoy. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Guiomar Rivera Matos, an intersectional feminist, a sister, and a daydreamer. I'm also a former student of INESI, the National Institute of Energy and Island Sustainability, and a second-year PhD student at the program of the Human and Social Dimension of Science and Technology at Arizona State University. And today I will share with you my experience studying my own community after a disaster and what I learned from it. I'm gonna share the picture at the end, so this is gonna be just this, like that. Currently we are living in a global climate crisis that is embedded with different regional crises. In the last couple of months, people around the world has been protesting in the streets against the decision that left most vulnerable population in more precarious situations. Now, more than ever, there is a need for academic institutions and thinkers to actually look deeper into this crisis with a critical intersectional lenses that take into consideration race, ethnicity, age, geographical location, gender, relationship of power, etc. On September 2017, the archipelago of Puerto Rico was impacted by Hurricane Irma and Maria, a moment that Puerto Ricans will not forget. Those moments were crucial for my development as a person, as a student, as a researcher, and as well as the growth of my radicalism. Fast forward to January 2018, as part of the joint effort in SE-ASU initiative to build collaboration between institutions in case of disaster, and also develop researchers that study their own community as a tool, I started a doctoral program to investigate the energy and poverty nexus in Puerto Rico. To my surprise, I discovered that there is a huge debate in academia about studying your own community. There are challenges. For example, it's difficult to understand the problem when you live there all the time. However, the re-socialization that happens in academic spaces grant you the ability to have different lenses on the problem. Studying your own community has many short and long-term benefits. However, it's important to start by defining what a community is for the specific case. If your community is the city of San Juan or La Isla Grande de Puerto Rico, then your geographical limitation will be different than if you study the barrio, the street, or the corner where you grow all your life. That is my case. It is an advantage for the researcher because you already have the social capital, the same language is spoken, as well as the knowledge of the basic virtues and deficits of the community. It also benefits the community since they have someone who, although she or he or they has been already re-socialized by academic experiences, has a comprehensive perspective of the different situations that the community is facing. And at the same time, it generates within the researcher a greater responsibility, since you care about the community, the people that live there, and the processes that occur through the research. Studying your own community open doors to spaces of trust, and I will give you an example. I remember the second visit I made to the community that I work in Puerto Rico. We generated a meeting with the community, NGOs, environmental activists, and ASU students. Since we as a group were unknowns, the people were worried about our presence there. The moment they recognized me, the whole dynamic changed. And one lady said, "I know her. I was her librarian when she was in middle school." So she hugged me, and then everything flowed there. So, however, there are suggestions and improvement from the academic institutions, researchers, and students, and NGOs that have to take place in this process. The first is the ethical process of studying vulnerable communities and post-disaster community. The art of listening and empathy with the community must be developed. This won't happen if you go on a field trip one day to collect interviews. I understand that maybe will be the case of many academics for reason of timing or funding. However, your perspective will be very limited to what you see that day. And not even in the natural side, I make a single visit to the case study site. For example, in geology, I'm trained in geology, you're constantly visiting the site and many times staying it for months to be able to make sense of what happened there. I think that is crucial for disaster research that having deep and long-term exposure so that we may build relationship with those who are opening the door of their community to us. Second is honesty with the community is another important factor. Most social researchers has no direct benefit to the community that are visited, and if they do, can be problematic because they interrupt the people's everyday life and can act as a form of colonization. So it's very important to have that honest relation. Third, as a researcher, you must understand that post-disaster communities, especially rural areas, do not travel at the speed of the cities do. We must recognize that fact so we are grounded in that space with the realities that they had and can slow down a little bit while we're there. Fourth, the theories are very important when going to the field. My invitation is to make the necessary theoretical work from a critical intersectional perspective to understand why there are inequities and social dynamics in the community so you authentically understand the problem before distributing solutions. 5, the participation of the researcher in the community process is important, however, only when requested. 6, honor previous research work done in the community by themselves or by others. And it's not always the case, but sometimes you will find that maybe the community have been research within themselves or other people have come before you, so it is important to do that. 7, be ready for experiences that are going to challenge your epistemological model and for your ego to be rattled. Be open to the possibility of changing your research team and being flexible. And I will give you another example of that. In the process of conducting in-depth interviews during my 3-month visit to the community to understand the relationship between people life and the electrical system, one of the informants, I had 2 informants, and I visited the remote house of 2 elders in the mountains. After talking and drinking coffee in a very boring house, we started the interview process. And as I gave the old man the interview protocol, there was an awkward and silent moment. And then he told me with a smile, "Mamita, yo no sé leer." He said he don't know how to read. And as carefully as I could, we went over the document together, and see they already consented. We did the interview. The day after that interview, the informant invited me to a coffee because we resolve everything with coffee. Everyone drinks coffee there, so the informant that took me to that place invited me to a coffee and told me that my question and methodologies were not aligned to the needs of the community and thus needed to be redesigned. It was hard. It was hard. However, the informants and I, both of them, worked together in the situation, and we did what we needed to do to continue the research the next 4 weeks that I had left in that community. So the conclusion, I will do it half in Spanish and half in English. And so the action that we execute as a researcher co-working, co-designing with community are very critical. Always in the grassroots community, but more in disaster situations. Y mi invitación para la gente que estamos y que están en los márgenes es que nadie nos quita el deseo de soñar despierto, de diseñar el mundo que queremos, que no se nos apague la luz, que continuamos resistiendo, escribiendo, que cuenten sus historias, que venimos en conjunto y que con mucha fuerza unidos venceremos. And now I'm gonna share, this is my conclusion, a quote from Lisa Toohey-White-Smith in her book Decolonizing Methodologies. Is one of my favorites. People, families, and organizations in marginalized communities struggle every day. It is a way of life that is necessary for survival. And when theorized and mobilized, can become a powerful strategy for transformation. Thank you. So this is the community where I live. It's in Jayuya, Puerto Rico. That is in the center of the island. The highest peak is over there. Do I have the red? It's here. It's the highest peak of the island. And this is a project that they have with solar panel and the community center. So these are the mountains that you have an idea. And this is another geographic one. This is after the Hurricane Maria and Irma. This is a Sister project in that I started with Dr. Marcel Castro in the town of Ayudan and Dr. Marla too. And you see the community making use of that emergency solar system. These are the 2 informants, and I have consent for this picture. And this is their data spreadsheet. You cannot see what is in there, but they were processing their data to see if the community wanted solar, the demographic, and their situation after the disaster. And this was because there are no computers, so they did it by hand. And the community leader received us every time that we said we will go there with a group. They will receive us in their houses, and it's a community that know how to install their own system, and there's a elderly community, so they got together and they were trained to do this. So that's how they can cope with the aftermath of the disaster. And so that was a PBS documentary that I can, and that's the community center. That is one of the houses that are in the, that is not the house, but the house was the last in the mountain, in the street. And that was their message for hope after the hurricane. Thank you.
I'll leave that one up. We have 10 minutes left. And I am not going to ask my questions because basically I agree with what they have all said, and basically we have just expanded on what I had said. Yamar almost made me cry, so gracias. Questions, I would like to let you ask. Yes?
Yeah, what type of PFA or mental health training did you put your people through prior to setting them up and to collect data? And that was one of my concerns with your particular presentation. I'm sorry, I was like, yeah.
Mental health training, do our researchers. I think it's a question for all of
For all of
the
you,
panelists.
yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
If we take, or what type of mental health training support?
Well, I know that we have a study called the Gulf Oil Study that has recruited, it's 135,000 cleanup workers that worked to clean up the Gulf oil spill. And our institute was given the responsibility of doing a huge longitudinal study of these cleanup workers because, you know, as you're more social science, I'm biomedical science. So, you know, after a disaster event, most people die not because of the immediate event, but they die a long time after due to their exposures. And our institute is trying to deal with those issues because we're the Environmental Health Institute, to come in and do research immediately after to see what these people have been exposed to so we can help mitigate those issues. You know, because, you know, if you look on TV with Hurricane Maria and they say, you know, this amount of people died, and then a year later, this amount of people died and perished. But that was probably in many cases due to, you know, accidents or whatever, but due to exposure and what they were exposed to. So for the Gulf oil study, one of the things that we were finding is that there are a lot of mental health issues after these disasters. And so we have put in place measures within protocols to sort of try to help the team deal with those issues when they arise, and how you mitigate that. So we do have, and Steve is in the back of the room, he has tried to put in those measures in the protocols. There is real time with IRB protocols, we are trying to allow researchers the opportunities to go into the field because you never know what you're going to get. So it can't be static, right? But they can report back what's happening in the field as they are recruiting, so that it helps the IRB to understand what's going on. And they develop these mental health tools that their people who are in the field actually are using.
Yeah, I guess my question is more geared towards the student population.
The student
When you're, for instance, when I'm dealing with my students, I want to make sure that they have some sort of psychological first aid tools that they can utilize prior to trying to go into a community to ask questions.
Right.
That is a big concern of mine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for themselves as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that. Just really briefly, one of the free online training modules that we're going to roll out is on the topic of emotionally challenging research, and it's actually been led by 3 graduate students at the University of Colorado Boulder, 2 of them who did work, are still doing work in Puerto Rico after Maria, and they were so concerned about the lack of exactly the kind of guidance that you were referring to. There's lots in the social sciences written about doing emotionally challenging ethnography, but one of the things we recognize through collaborating a lot with physical scientists and engineers is that they say, we were unprepared for how emotionally affected we were going to be because we study buildings or what, but it's all an affected human landscape, and so that is one of the training modules that we will be rolling out in the new year, in addition to one on ethics and one on the IRB. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely that's first interaction that summer as a first semester graduate student. I was very unprepared. However, in the project that we have now, it's a 3-year project in collaboration with 4 communities in the 2nd and 3rd year. We actually have an area that is dedicated to mental health, and we will have someone for each community and for the team in all our interaction that work on that. So it's like the finding that we had for that summer, we integrated in our new project. It's a DOE Department of Energy funded project, and now we are taking that into consideration. But thank you. Thank you.
In my case, when I was doing the research, I immediately realized the problem and I started going to therapy. And I'm an archaeologist. How often do you get traumatized by the things that you find? But because we're working with communities, especially after Maria, that we are engaging so actively, my first comment to students is we are always on top of mental health. So we have strong contacts both with the counseling services in the institution, but also my department, the Department of Anthropology, has the Global Health Program that is particularly the psychological and medical anthropology, and we are engaged with them in the part of mental health and continuously being in communication with the faculty that deal with that too. So it's within our protocols, if my bad. Yes, one here and another there. Let's try to be a little bit. Oh, you wanted to add something, Lori? Sorry, 1 second. Sorry.
Just not related to the training I took, but what was really striking to me was that the community I've worked in, and I worked there 10 years and 5 years after the impact, was how mental health informed these communities were and what they have achieved, and in how far they were actually speaking with me about how I cope and were supporting me in this process. And in Aceh, just to give perspective, during the civil war, they had only 5 psychiatrists for a whole province of about 6 million people. And as part of the recovery, they decided not just to provide post-traumatic care, but to use it as an opportunity to develop community-based mental health care workers. And this also changed the perception of people with mental health care challenges who were previously excluded, that this became an integration effort across society. And so I just wanted to add that sometimes the communities take actions themselves and become mental health informed communities and are supporting researchers in this process.
So I wanted to thank all the panelists. This has been I've learned a lot. It's been very informative, especially my colleague at the NIEHS, Dr. Pakenham, my other colleague at the ASA, Environmental Sociology, Lori. But I wanted to say to Giamma, thank you for sharing your story. As an undergraduate student, when you were told you have to go back to the drawing board, right? It's not when they told you the protocol and all that. It really takes a lot at that level of, and many an undergraduate would say, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to study this has been traumatic, but that wasn't you. And I wanted to thank you for keep going on La Lucha, the struggle for justice, ecological justice, human justice. Thank you, Giamma. Thank you very much.
Well, if there's people with hard of hearing, it's important to use microphones.
No, it's okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Santos, and I am from the University of Iowa. Well, Iowa State University. I am an undergrad, and I've done research experiments in Puerto Rico. And I just wanted to ask you guys a question, because I think when we talk about Puerto Rico, it's this notion of like Puerto Ricans, and I just really want to appreciate that you guys are bringing the intersectionality approach, and you said this is all people. That actually is so important for research, for researchers and research per se. And I just wonder, like, I have seen, this is just me, zero literature about, you know, immigrants living on Puerto Rico. And because Puerto Rico is a state, territory, whatever it is, we don't know, and it's part of our conversation, I just wonder, like, how does the IRB take place? You know, and all these boards does acknowledge and validates these pre-existing conditions, you know, all these people who are part of Puerto Rico and who does contribute to our society. And even la diaspora, it would just keep marginalizing, you know, this immigrant population, which is as valuable as the other, as all of us. And because I'm bringing this up because we're living in a really interesting juncture as a society where there's all, you know, hate speech going on. But it does transfer to the recovery conversation. And I've seen, you know, like firsthand, a lot of people just being denied because they cannot access to aid because they're not U.S. citizens. And that does, you know, come with a lot of privilege to be here and to say it because they cannot have that voice. And it's going with that question of what research is for and who is really, you know, the participants is the one that we work for, right? And it's to elevate and active on that conversation. So I wonder, like, again, what type of IRB compliance or what type of board does verify that there's, you know, an equal approach to research to all of the marginalized communities in Puerto Rico in this case.
I would like to ask our panelists to answer very quickly because we have one more comment here. I appreciate very much your comment, and I do acknowledge that in my work, but we can talk more about it because we're out of time and lunch is behind us. So one answer, somebody's itching to reply to
For the IRB, I'll reply since I'm the IRB. I think that it's the researcher's responsibility to know the community that they are going in and working on. And it's their responsibility to let the IRB know we just reviewed the research, right, that they send us. And so that's why it's important for us to have what we're considering the tool that I call PD React, because it is supposed to give the context of the situation. For the community, they're supposed to tell us who the community is that they're working with and who these people are pre and post disaster. So it's important for the researcher to know that information and to put that information in a form that is acceptable so that reviewers who are not familiar with that can understand and make an informed decision as to if there's enough information, if these people really know what they're doing, have they been trained to go in, you know, all of that. So it's up to the researcher.
and challenge our perspectives of our communities.
Yeah.
I just want to make a provocative comment. That is excellent, outstanding, and it's what we need. But we all at strive for these same values. We're behind that. What are you going to do, or what can we do when everything we stand for is being dismantled? And when everything you talk about the IRB, and the draft of the new EPA called strengthening transparency in regulatory science is going to require all scientists to disclose all the raw data, including confidential medical records, before the agency can consider an academic study's conclusion. When something like that is so openly in our faces, dismantling the core of what we believe in and why we're here today, what can we do?
So I guess you're pointing to me as the government representative?
Well, not only.
I would give you the politically correct statement that I can give.
No, I
under the
understand that.
situation.
So my question is not to put you on the spot. My question is, as a government representative, giving one of the best IRB calls for action that I have seen, what would you tell us who can speak openly and we still retain that right? What can we do to fight this attack on science and the integrity of research?
Well, first of all, let me say that I feel sorry for my colleagues at the EPA, okay? Because they're under the office of the president. We have protections at NIH because we're under DHHS. So we are protected somewhat, okay? So they're great researchers and they're great people and they're just following what comes down. And that's basically the politically correct statement that I can make. But we will continue to do what we can in the midst of everything that's going on.
Call of action is for all of us.
Yes, we will, NIH will, I can say that, can I say that, Steve? Steve is looking at me. Can I say that? Extramural. That NIEHS will continue to try to do the best that we can do with the disaster response program, because Francis Collins, who is the director of NIH, is very much, he started the program. So he's very much aware and very much wants to push it forward. Okay.
Thanks everyone for your patience. Let's give a hand to our panelists. I see food back there, so we can get first hand at the queue and the line up for food. We are all here, so feel free to reach out for more questions. Thank you so much for your attention.
I can't say it.